everyone. This is WD, Carousel of Podcast. I'm Ian.
And I'm Crystal.
And today we're going to talk about another ride, which we haven't done in a really long time.
Like it was our second episode or something like that.
Like Haunted Mansion was episode 3 or something like that. So anyway, after last week's kind of more serious deep dive, we're going to try to go a little lighter, just talk about some park stuff.
Yeah!
So we're going to talk about one of our favorite rides.
Get to know your park.
And this is one of those rides that you're going to see in almost every iteration of Disney, which makes it really fun to talk about.
Except for Disneyland Paris. They don't have one, primarily because almost every other amusement park around there has its own iteration very similar, so they don't want to copy it again.
I gotcha.
Yeah, this time we are talking about
the Jungle Cruise.
Yes, we are.
It's an early one.
If you like dad jokes, if you like bad puns, if you just love talking about the ruler of the jungle, this is for you.
Coming up on the left side is Inspiration Falls. People wonder why it's called Inspiration Falls. Well, if you look into its water long enough, it inspires you to go deeper and deeper into the jungle, that is.
So,
okay, enough of that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. So, this is a very early ride. I believe it was a Walt original.
It is a Walt original. It was one that was inspired by the movie The African Queen by Katharine Hepburn. And Walt wanted to do something that was very similar to it in the first park. So we're talking a Disneyland original opening day ride.
Late 50s.
And this is, no, not late 50s. It was open day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was opening day. And this is also the first ride that they came up with for the Disneyland park that was not affiliated with an IP.
Oh, sure. So none of their existing Disney characters.
So it wasn't like the Peter Pan ride. It wasn't like any of that.
Still movie inspired, though, which I think is interesting.
But not a Disney
movie. They kind of, and when you go on the ride, you really get that, like, 40s, 50s jungle movie kind of going off into the bush and that whole thing.
And we were exploring. We were adventurers. And we were going to adventure. we're going on an adventure.
Exactly. So it's very, very mid-Atlantic and very, very fun.
Now, for those who have not been on the ride, it is a boat tour.
Yes.
Through the rivers of the world?
Yeah, because they kind of go through different rivers throughout, right? I mean, you're on
the same loop.
Right.
But they all of a sudden are like, and we're in the Nile River. It goes on for Niles.
That's a thing you can do.
And Niles.
Yeah, they basically just change rivers so they can make bad puns. So.
And this started off actually as a serious, adventure ride too. In the beginning, it wasn't all the puns, it wasn't all the dad jokes either. This is something that Walt wanted to do education with. Like, there are animals that are on the ride, and they are some of Disney's first animatronics.
They are, yeah.
And the reason that they had to come up with the animatronics was because Walt originally wanted to have the animals, like the live animals, but there were so many zoologists and animal experts that were like, it's not such a good idea.
Right.
They don't follow a script.
When would you look at that? The pride of lions is guarding that sleeping zebra. How cute.
Yeah.
And I believe most of them that he wanted were nocturnal. Which would kind of defeat
that, or they were kind of dangerous to just have next to them on a boat, like hippos, just for example,
or alligators.
Right. So they were kind of just like, Walt, no, Walt, no.
And he's like, okay, fine. Then we'll go with the animatronics.
And then they had to build animatronics.
And the animatronics are they? What kind?
I believe they're hydraulic.
I was going to say I think they're the hydraulic because they're in water, so that would make sense. You don't want to have any.
I believe the only current non-hydraulic based or electronic pneumatic or electronic actuators, the only ones that are air, I believe, are just Tiki Room.
Okay.
At this
point.
So
you're riding on this ride and you're hearing as these animals are like,
Yeah, they're not. They're a little worse for wear in terms of the technology.
That adds to the charm of how horribly funny this ride is.
I don't know when they made that switch between it being like a real thing.
I think it was only a few years after
Okay.
the ride came out. And I think, now this is just me trying to remember, and slightly rumors possibly, that some of the cast members started making occasional puns.
Gotcha.
And that the guests loved them.
Right. Well, because there came a point where it's like, this is a joke, right? This is a joke. Like, because you can't take it seriously at some point. Because the technology advanced beyond it very quickly.
Very quickly.
And if you were really trying to take it seriously, like you're trying to bold-faced tell me that is a hippopotamus down there. Really? It was kind of weird to continue to lie like that so blatantly when you, especially the real person telling you it.
Or the headhunters.
Yeah, there's
everybody duck.
Exactly. So.
By the way, one of them in Disney World, if you're listening, after you pass the dancing area where you have the ambush, and everybody's like, duck, you're going to hear one of them go, I love disco.
Why, though?
I don't know. I think they try and connect it back to right now they're trying to connect it to Everest because the Yeti is Disco Yeti. But also when the Disney World Park was created, that was in the 70s. And disco was a thing. And so you hear this little, I love disco.
Yeah, I've only done the Disney World version, I should mention.
Yes.
And I think by the time they built that one, it was already a joke to begin with.
Yes.
I mean, like they built that one in Disney World full well knowing that it was already
a satire. Going to be not a serious ride.
Right. And and the thing that really sets the Jungle Cruise apart from a lot of other Disney water, ride-through rides like that with animatronics and boats, is the fact that you've got a real skipper.
Yes.
Which is a big deal. It really, and we've talked about this in our top Disney World attraction countdown, and it really is very interesting because there aren't that many rides where you come. The other one that I can think off the top of my head was the Great Movie Ride. May it rest in peace.
This is one where may it rest in peace. But this is one of the ones where the cast member actually has to learn lines. And not only that, but they have to be able to go with the flow. They're on a boat. They also are having to make it seem like they're actually steering the boat. So a lot of times there's a wheel that moves behind them, and they're the ones that are moving it one way or another way. And so the first time that I rode it, I'll admit, I was like, wow, they must have been doing this forever, that they're not just paying attention.
Right.
They don't have to pay attention to this area. They just know the timing. Cool.
No. The boat drives itself.
Yeah. No, there's a track. Yeah. And it's a really shallow river.
It's about, my understanding is its deepest is about 6 feet. And the shallowest is around 5 feet, a little less than 5 feet.
And you can't see the track because they dye the water a murky, greenish brown, blue kind of color. To make it look questionable.
Yeah. It's and
sanitary
in fact, in Disneyland, I don't remember this for Disney World for sure, but in Disneyland it's actually part of what they call the dark water system. And it's actually like Disney has a self-contained water system that goes all the way from the north end of the park to the south end of the park, and it's just little connected waterways and tributaries.
Interesting.
That's all dark water that's recycled. It's not connected to the outside world at all. It's just their own little bit of dark water.
Interesting.
And that's actually part of it. Like it ends at like Tarzan's treehouse or something, and it goes through a pipe at the end and it's recycled back to the top and goes back down again. So it's an actual thing. Like they design these types of dark water things are, and that's true for a lot of Disney.
And they have to have the cycling water too, or else with the dyes, it would like clump,
settle,
and you wouldn't be able to see, or you would be able to see the track hiding underneath.
Not to mention the fact that there's going to be all the the hydraulic cabling for the
Animals, the half animals.
Yeah, the half animals, and then they've got platforms that those animals are resting on, and perches, and there's things in the water
Disney
that they don't
magic
want
would
to
be
see.
ruined.
Yeah, so it's just all covered with crappy looking water. That's legitimately they do that.
Looking but healthy.
Yeah, and they do that for a couple of their rides, where they have rides with water that's not clear, so they can hide elements underneath it.
Since we're kind of talking about water just slightly, when they were building Walt Disney World, they intentionally planned Adventureland to be on the same side of the park that the Polynesian would be on the
Really? In the Disney World
yeah
stuff. Gotcha.
on that lagoon. Is it the
Oh.
Seven Seas Lagoon? I always get these mixed up. I don't know the big waterways.
I don't know that one. Yeah. Yeah, the Polynesian though is so if
Because
you were
it's kind of adventure-y too
Right,
and everything, so
right,
they have
right.
it lined up so it matches with Adventureland when you're
Right.
looking at it from yeah.
those little fun, because we talked about that in Haunted Mansion, where they had, it wasn't about the Haunted Mansion, but when you're sitting at Epcot and you're in the Morocco Pavilion and you look through, you can see the backside of Tower of Terror, and they've actually styled it out so it looks like the Morocco Pavilion.
It's
So
Disney magic.
Another one of those things where there's just a weird attention to detail that you're like, I would have never even imagined thinking about that being a thing before it was built, let alone, like, it's just so much planning that it's just unbelievable. Anyway, so that's pretty cool, and so that live skipper really does add a lot to the ride, and to be fair, it can also detract if the skipper isn't as exciting as I could be, but I've had some hysterical ones.
Oh my god, I like the Jungle Cruise has turned into one of my all-time favorite rides just because of the personality twists that they put
play
on it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's amazing.
I think my personal favorite was, we go by the waterfalls and the guy goes, the skipper said, he's like, and this is Inspirational Falls because it inspires you to go deeper into the jungle, and everyone just kind of was like, see what you did there.
yeah.
So it's stuff like that. That's the stuff that you're gonna get, and I know that he probably wouldn't have done that joke if maybe it was less older people, or because they can definitely play with it depending on how they feel at the audience. I mean, they're basically stand-up comics.
Oh yeah,
in a certain degree.
How many famous people have gotten their start off of being a skipper on the Jungle Cruise?
Oh, absolutely.
A number of people.
Well, yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a good place to find just people who don't care. I mean,
Yeah.
they care a lot because they're Disney. Don't get me wrong, but they're like, just like my last relationship.
Right. Well, they do a good job of being that comedic, like, let it all out, kind of just ready to present themselves and not care what people think.
And at the end, there's a part where there's always a little bit of a wait depending on how long the
queue is coming back into the unloading.
to unload. And so this is where they can run out of jokes pretty quick, but it's their job to keep talking and keep us going while we're sitting there waiting to unload.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can have some that are like, oh, okay, you were stretching on that one.
Yeah.
But then you have some that are like, oh, I could just listen to you
for a while listening to that. Yeah. So it is really a big deal. And I have a specific story based on the live skippers that I want to talk about. Not happened to me, but this happened in 2004.
Okay.
At I believe Disneyland, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And it was they had one of the boats had just come out of come out of service after being in a little bit of service. It just came out, and it was about, by the time they got to the hippos, the skipper looked down and she was looking, and all the people were looking, and water was literally coming into the boat. For real water coming into the boat, and so they had to. I believe she called using one of the patrons'
Cell phones.
They got Disney Dispatch, and they got everyone off safely. Because I mean, it's on the tracks, not like it's going to go flying off in the distance. But they got everyone off, and they had to take it back into service, and they put the entire ride out of service for the rest of the day, and they came back through. But it was the only boat in the entire time of that ride existing, and all across all of the different versions of it, that a boat ever sank.
Yeah, that was 2004, wasn't it?
Yep.
And that boat still is running today.
It's running today, yeah. And
they fixed it.
Did they ever find out what it was? I looked it up and I couldn't remember, because I know that there's a main plug on most boats, that it's just like a requirement for some reason, where you have this little plug that's in the base of the boat, and they sometimes pull them out for repairs. So there's speculation that I've read that they just forgot to put it back in, something goofy. But anyway, so and the ongoing rumor is that she was the skipper. She was the last person to be on the boat, in which everyone else got off first. I'm like, that's true captain dedication right there with the ship. Yeah, in 6 feet of water. But I mean, still, it's not a laughing matter. I mean, it's a very controlled environment, but it was still a real thing that they had to sort out. But in all that time and all those rides, that was the one time that everyone got off safely. So I don't worry about riding it. But no need to worry about life jackets or anything. But it's a really fun ride.
I think at one point in time there was also, now again, I probably should have done a little bit of research on this before I brought it up in the podcast. But I believe at one point in time they even had like a gun with blanks in it to like shoot off or warn off the crocodiles.
Oh, jeez.
Now, the last time I was on it, the girl that was our skipper was like, I know how to scare them away. And she goes off of the microphone that she's on, and she's like, I love you! I want a commitment! Please meet my parents!
Don't worry, folks. We'll never hear from them again.
So, it's a good replacement for the gun.
Yeah, it requires creativity on the skipper's part, which I think is really, the fact of the matter is, it's basically like you're riding through a set. Mm-hmm. A really well done set. And in the early days, when they built it originally, they took like orange trees and would like unplant them and flip them over and plant them again, and so it looked like vines. Mm-hmm. So they'd grow funny because they had flipped them over.
They had planned to have this ride around this one, I think it was, really need to write down notes on this, a eucalyptus tree or something to help with the exotic plants that they wanted to have around to help keep them alive and the nutrients in the soil and all of that.
Right. They did bring in exotic plants, but they also used what they called character plants, and they're basically just like native plants around here that are around the United States.
There's a hibiscus.
That just look more.
There's a lobiscus.
Right.
And there's a seabiscus.
Anyway, they're basically just
I made
plants
him lose thought.
I know, it's like a game at this point. But basically they're plants that are just native, but they look more crazy than they are. And they used a lot of that. They would take, like orange trees and flip them upside down, all that kind of stuff to make it look more grown over.
There is one palm tree that is really well known, and this is a serious one. So the people who owned the land that Disneyland was built on.
Disneyland, okay.
Had the gentleman who the Disney company bought it from, his grandparents, his grandfather had bought this palm tree for his grandmother.
Oh, wow.
And they decided to keep it on the property, and they moved it over near the entrance to the Jungle Cruise.
Okay.
And now that tree is like 150 years old, and it's really tall. So if you're in Disneyland and you see this really tall palm tree next to the Jungle Cruise, was put there in memory of the original family who owned the land.
The property. That's very cool.
So that's nice and sweet.
Yeah. And a little bit of backstory on their fake story for the Jungle Cruise.
So talk about the fake story a little bit.
Of the Jungle Cruise?
Yes.
So in terms of the setup, and this is kind of what I remember the most about. I haven't been on it in a little bit.
That'll be fixed in September.
I know, we're working on it. But the whole plot line leading into it is kind of like not East India Trading Company, but kind of one of those like European Anglo kind of adventure tour companies, and you get on like their little steamer, and you're to go into the rivers of the world and never come back, was kind of the entire concept. And really it just kind of is a comedic story of misadventure in the jungle, which is kind of fun in the sense that it's really it's now become a farce of the movies that it was originally inspired by.
And we are inspired by, or movies are inspired by it. So in Tarzan, with the trashing of the camp and the gorillas taking over the camp and everything, you'll see a scene very similar to that in the Jungle Cruise.
So it's become very influential that way. And in fact, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but it became the basis for what ended up being Walt's dream kind of coming to full fruition in Animal Kingdom with the Kilimanjaro Safari.
Because they were able to then figure out how to work with the animals and how to have that tour to be able to see all these animals in their natural habitat and talk about them a bit.
It kind of became what Walt wanted the Jungle Cruise to be in the long run. And I love that the Jungle Cruise was like Walt's dream that just kind of turned into a joke. I kind of love that about it, and I think that's what a lot of people really enjoy about that ride. And then you go to Kilimanjaro Safari, and sure they don't take it too seriously. It's still kind of supposed to be kind of funny.
This bridge looks rickety. Whoa!
Yeah, we've been there before. and it's all a little tongue in cheek as well. But it's a lot more serious in the fact that the animals that they're showing you are really there.
Live animals.
When you're looking at it, it's really a thing and not just them having to be like, I know this is a really fake hippo. Like, we all know it's a fake hippo. Like, we know there's no suspension of disbelief here. This is a joke. But in Kilimanjaro
What do you mean?
Safari,
That zebra was just sleeping.
Anyway, Kilimanjaro Safari is really what it kind of turned into. And so it's cool to see that it was the original concept. The prototype has now has its own life breathed into it by the people and time itself, and everybody it turned into something of its own right. And that's the same with like Haunted Mansion. A lot of these old rides, they kind of took on a life of their own that kind of was beyond.
And a cult following.
Yes, and a cult following always comes along with the Disney rides, right? And it really kind of developed its own thing. And then on top of that, the beauty of what Jungle Cruise was, though, is it's what it was originally intended to be kind of ended up being its own thing separately. And I think that's really a neat full circle for a ride like that. So.
Now let's talk about some of the Easter eggs that you'll find in the ride. Because this is some place where they did a lot of recycling. And it's kind of interesting to think about it. So in the Jungle Cruise, you are going to find the back half of a plane.
Yes.
And the back half of that plane is corresponding with the front half of a plane that used to be in the great movie ride, may it rest in peace. And in the Casablanca scene, they had bought an actual full plane, chopped it in half, went, okay, you guys get this half and you guys get this half.
That sounds classically Disney.
That's I don't know what they're doing with the front half of the plane that used to be in the great movie ride, may it rest in peace.
Yeah.
But the back half you will still see in there.
This is all making me miss the backlot tour, may it rest in peace.
Yeah. We're just going to keep saying may it rest in peace.
Every time there's a ride that doesn't exist anymore, we're going to say may it rest in peace at the end of it.
There are 3 canoes when you're heading towards Headhunter Country that have carved faces on the front, and those are supposed to be Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. You can tell the Donald one a little bit more than the Mickey and Goofy. They're kind of smoking something to make that connection, but Donald's there. I can see that.
All right.
We already talked about the I love disco.
Yeah.
And then the other one is at the end, you're going to find Trader Sam. And he is the head
salesman, right?
Yes, the head salesman of the jungle. And his skirt used to be and this is just rumored, used to be the old canopies that they had on the boats before they switched them over to a more
durable,
neutral looking, more jungle looking canopies. It used to be
funny.
the red and white stripes, and you're going to see old tattered red and white stripes skirt on him to try and make the connection.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a little nod to
wink to the
the classic.
He got the old boats. Yeah, that's fine.
Head salesman of the jungle. And then another fun thing that happens is during the holidays, it changes, it morphs into the Jingle Cruise.
Ooh,
and that's
where
all of the bad holiday jokes come out. So every boat, their name changes. They cover the U on the main sign with an I on a piece of wood. And all of the jokes then have Christmas jokes.
Oh, man.
They dress up the sets in Christmas lights and presents. And so the gorillas have torn up all the presents.
Sure. Sure.
You know, it's a good time to
When
have.
Imagineers get bored, like it's
Ugh. But if you could just make all the bad Christmas puns and put them in one location,
just concentrate it right there.
that's what the Jingle Cruise.
Now, the Jingle Cruise, my question is, does that exist in all the parks?
Just the U.S. parks. So
it is in all of
Disneyland,
the, it
Disney
is in
World.
both U.S. parks.
Yes.
Okay.
That is the one ride that does change for both U.S.
theme parks.
parks.
Okay.
It's not the Tokyo Park or any of the others. It's just the U.S.
Okay.
parks.
Okay. Very cool.
So
It's a fun ride.
yeah, it's one of my favorites. We might insert a little clip or so in here. Just
We'll see.
we'll see. And this is like the one ride that doesn't have a gift shop at the end, even though it talks
true.
about it.
Oh, that's funny. It's like almost their own thing. It's like self-referential. We're not even going to give you one now.
Yeah. So you're not stuck with a, gift shop, even though I probably would get something from the gift shop there.
For real, though. I'm sure that exists. I'm sure there's a sweatshirt for Jungle Cruise out there.
The backside of water.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to go on it again, and it's going to be fun.
And on that note, I think we're done.
I think we are.
So, I'm Crystal.
I'm Ian.
Thanks for watching WD Carousel of Podcast or listening. And I hope you have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
There's a great big beautiful tomorrow, just a dream